Maya Rivers stepped into the Blackthorn mansion through the front door, her worn duffel bag clutched in white-knuckled fingers. She'd heard the rumors about this place. About the twins who'd driven away 14 nannies in 6 months. About the widowed alpha who ruled his pack with iron control but couldn't manage 2 5-year-old boys. She needed this job. Desperately. Master Ethan. Master Owen. A harried-looking woman in a housekeeper's uniform rushed past Maya without acknowledgement. Please come down from there. Maya followed the commotion upstairs, her omega instincts already picking up the scent of distressed pups. The smell hit her like a physical blow, fear, abandonment, and a grief so deep it made her chest ache. She'd smelled it before in the mirror, after losing her own child 3 years ago. The hallway stretched before her, portraits of stern-faced Blackthorn ancestors watching from gilded frames. Shouts and crashes came from behind a closed door at the end. Maya approached cautiously, her heart already breaking at the sound of children's sobs. "Boys!" She knocked softly. "I'm Maya. I'm here too." The door flew open. A small boy with dark hair and tear-streaked cheeks glared up at her with golden eyes that held too much pain for someone so young. "Go away. Ethan, or was it Owen?" shouted. "We don't want another nanny. We want Mama." The second twin appeared beside his brother, identical except for a small scar on his chin. Both boys reeked of distress and defiance. Maya crouched to their eye level, ignoring the way her knees protested against the marble floor. "I know you do, sweetheart. I know you do." Something in her tone must have reached them because their aggressive postures wavered. She could see it then, the desperate need behind their anger, the way they leaned toward her even as they tried to push her away. "Where are you supposed to be right now?" she asked gently. The twins exchanged a look. Without warning, they bolted down the hallway. Maya followed, her instincts screaming at her to protect, to comfort, to gather these lost pups close and never let them go. She found them in what had to be the master bedroom, but they weren't hiding under the bed or behind curtains like she'd expected. They were in the walk-in closet, buried deep in a mountain of women's clothes that still carried the faint scent of their mother. Maya's heart shattered completely. "Oh, babies," she whispered, and without thinking, without considering protocol or proper boundaries, she climbed into the closet with them. The space was cramped with all 3 of them, silk dresses and cashmere sweaters creating a cocoon around their huddle. The twins immediately pressed against her sides, and Maya began to sing. An old lullaby her own mother had sung, passed down through generations of her pack before they'd all been lost to hunters. "Hush now, little moonbeam, the night will keep you safe." Her voice was rusty from disuse, but the twins melted against her. For the first time since entering the house, they smelled like children instead of walking wounds. Owen, she was pretty sure it was Owen, tucked his face against her neck. "Mama used to sing to us. She had a pretty voice," Maya murmured, stroking Ethan's hair as he fought sleep. "Just like yours will be when you're older. Will you stay?" Ethan whispered. "The others always leave." Maya's throat closed. She'd been fired from 3 jobs this month alone. No pack meant no references, no stability, no trust from employers who preferred their help to come with werewolf community backing. But looking at these broken little boys, she made a promise she hoped she could keep. "I'll try, sweetheart. I'll try my very best." She must have dozed because the next thing she knew, a voice like winter thunder was roaring her name. Except he didn't know her name, so he was just roaring. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Maya's eyes snapped open to find herself face-to-face with 6.5 feet of furious alpha male. Kieran Blackthorn filled the closet doorway like an avenging angel, his dark hair disheveled and his golden eyes. So like his son's, burning with rage and something that looked like devastation. "Sir, I can explain. Get out." His voice dropped to a lethal whisper that made her wolf whimper and try to hide. "Get out of her things. Get away from my sons. Get out of my house." The twins stirred against her, sensing their father's fury even in sleep. Maya tried to move carefully, tried not to wake them, but Ethan's eyes fluttered open. "Papa, go back to sleep, son. The nanny was just leaving." "No." Owen shot upright, immediately alert. "She stays. She sings like Mama." Kieran's face went white, then flushed with a rage so complete that Maya's omega instincts screamed at her to submit, to run, to do anything to appease the furious alpha. But the twins were clinging to her now, and she couldn't abandon them. "Mr. Blackthorn, please." The slap came out of nowhere, snapping her head to the side and filling her mouth with the taste of copper. The twins screamed, whether from fear or outrage she couldn't tell. Her cheek throbbed, but the emotional blow was worse. She'd never been struck by an alpha before, never experienced that particular kind of dominance and shame. "Papa, no!" Ethan threw himself between them, tiny fists pounded against his father's legs. "Don't hurt Maya. Don't make her go away like Mama did." The words hit Kieran like a physical blow. Maya watched his face crumble for just a moment before that iron control slammed back into place. But the damage was done. She'd seen the grief, raw and bleeding and all-consuming. "Boys, go to your room. We want Maya." Owen's voice climbed toward hysteria. She stays. She stays or we go with her." "You can't leave us, Papa," Ethan whispered, and Maya heard the real fear underneath. Not that they'd be taken away, but that he'd disappear too, leaving them completely alone. Kieran closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Maya saw a man at war with himself. The alpha in him wanted her gone, this strange omega who dared enter his dead mate's sanctuary. But the father in him was looking at his sons, really looking, and seeing them calm for the first time in months. "You have 3 strikes," he said finally, his voice deadly quiet. "1 for entering her closet without permission. 2 for overstepping boundaries with my children. 3 strikes and you're gone, no matter what they say. Are we clear?" Maya touched her stinging cheek, tasting blood where her teeth had cut her lip. "Crystal. Good." He turned to his sons, his voice gentling slightly. "Bath time. Both of you. Will Maya give us our bath?" Owen asked hopefully. "Maya will do whatever I tell her to do," Kieran said, his eyes never leaving hers. "And right now, I'm telling her that she's on very thin ice." As the twins reluctantly left the closet, chattering about bubbles and bath toys with the resilience of children, Maya remained frozen among the silk and cashmere ghosts of a woman she'd never meet but would apparently never escape. Kieran lingered in the doorway, his massive frame blocking most of the light. "Her name was Isabella," he said quietly. "She died giving birth to their sister. The baby died too." His voice held no emotion, but Maya could smell the grief rolling off him in waves. "They've been in this closet every day since the funeral 6 months ago. 14 nannies couldn't get them out." Maya struggled to her feet, silk scarves clinging to her hair. "Mr. Blackthorne. Don't." He held up a hand. "Don't apologize, don't explain, don't try to fix this. You're here because they need you, not because I want you here. Remember that." He started to leave, then paused. "And Maya, next time you want to comfort my sons, do it somewhere that doesn't smell like their dead mother." As his footsteps retreated down the hallway, Maya sank back against the closet wall, surrounded by the lingering scent of lavender perfume and the weight of a grief that wasn't hers to carry. But she would carry it anyway. For Ethan and Owen, for the babies who'd lost too much too young, she'd carry whatever burden this broken family needed her to bear. Even if it destroyed her in the process. 2 strikes down. 1 to go. She just had to make sure she didn't waste it. Chapter 2. Boundary Lines and Broken Rules. Maya stood in the marble foyer 3 days later, her duffel bag at her feet and a folded piece of paper in her hands. The house felt different in the morning light, less like a mausoleum and more like a home that had forgotten how to breathe. Kieran emerged from what she assumed was his office, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than she'd made in the last 6 months. He looked like he hadn't slept, but then again, neither had she. The ghost of his handprint still tingled on her cheek. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "I keep my promises to children." Maya lifted her chin, meeting his golden gaze directly. "But I have conditions." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You're hardly in a position to make demands." 2 strikes, Mr. Blackthorne. Not 3. She unfolded the paper, her hand steady despite the way her heart hammered against her ribs. "I've written them down so there's no confusion later." She could smell his surprise, sharp and clean like winter air. Alphas weren't used to Omega's setting terms, especially not unemployed Omegas with no pack backing. But Maya had learned the hard way that if you didn't advocate for yourself, no one else would. "First," she read, "I won't be living in the staff quarters. I'll take the guest wing. The staff quarters are perfectly adequate. I'm not staff." The words came out harder than she'd intended. "I'm a professional childcare provider. There's a difference." Something flickered in his eyes, respect or annoyance, she couldn't tell which. "Continue. Second, you don't monitor my methods with the boys unless there's a safety concern. No cameras in playrooms, no hovering, no questioning every decision I make." She'd worked for helicopter parents before. It never ended well. "Trust me to do my job or fire me now." Kieran's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "And third," this was the big one. Maya took a breath, steeling herself for his reaction. Family dinner. Every night. You, me, and the twins. No excuses, no work emergencies, no pack business that can't wait an hour. Absolutely not. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Maya folded the paper, tucked it into her purse, and reached for her bag. Wait. The word came out sharper than he'd probably intended. Why dinner? Maya turned back to face him, seeing not the intimidating alpha, but a father who'd forgotten how to be present for his children. When's the last time you had a real conversation with Ethan and Owen? Not instructions or discipline, a conversation. His silence was answer enough. They need their father, Mr. Blackthorne. Not just the alpha who provides for them, but the man who knows their favorite colors and which one has nightmares and who's better at building blocks. Her voice softened despite herself. They're growing up without you. For a moment, his carefully constructed mask slipped, and she saw the raw pain underneath. Then it was back, leaving her wondering if she'd imagined it. 1 hour, he said finally. And if you're late serving dinner, it's on you. I don't cook. Maya allowed herself a small smile. But I'm excellent at ordering takeout. The sound that escaped him might have been a laugh if he'd let it develop fully. Instead, he straightened his tie and headed for the door. Mrs. Chun will show you to your room. The boys are in the kitchen having breakfast. Mr. Blackthorne? He paused at the threshold. Thank you. He didn't respond, but she caught the subtle nod before he disappeared into the morning. Maya found the twins exactly where their father had said, sitting at a breakfast bar that could have seated 12, looking tiny and lost in the enormous kitchen. Mrs. Chun, a compact woman in her 60s with kind eyes and graying hair, was trying to coax them into eating scrambled eggs. Good morning, boys. 2 identical heads snapped up, golden eyes lighting with relief and joy. Maya! They launched themselves off their stools and into her arms, nearly knocking her backward with their enthusiasm. Miss Maya, she corrected gently, breathing in their scent, already cleaner, less desperate than 3 days ago. Did you sleep well? Owen had a bad dream, Ethan reported, still clinging to her waist. But he didn't cry. I'm getting braver, Owen announced proudly. Like Papa. Maya's chest tightened. Even their attempts at courage were heartbreaking. Dreams can be scary sometimes. There's nothing wrong with crying when you're scared. Mrs. Chin approached with a cup of coffee that smelled like heaven. You're the new nanny, she said, studying Maya with sharp eyes. The one who got them out of the closet. I'm Maya Rivers. She accepted the coffee gratefully. And you must be Mrs. Chun. 43 years I've worked for this family, the older woman said, settling into what was clearly a routine morning lecture. I've seen 5 nannies for these boys just since spring started. You want to know why none of them lasted? Maya sipped her coffee and waited. They all thought they could fix him. Mrs. Chun jerked her head toward the door Kieran had exited through. Alpha's been broken since the Luna died. Completely devoted to her memory, won't look at another woman, won't even attend pack gatherings where unmated females might be present. I'm not here to fix anyone, Maya said quietly. I'm here for the boys. Good. Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. Because every Omega in 3 packs has tried to catch his attention since the mourning period ended. He turns them all down flat. Some of them. Well, let's just say they didn't take rejection gracefully. Maya filed that information away for later consideration. For now, she had more immediate concerns. Boys, finish your breakfast. Then we're going to have a talk about rules. An hour later, she had Ethan and Owen settled in what had been designated as the playroom, though it looked more like a toy store had exploded. Expensive educational toys sat untouched, while broken action figures and headless dolls littered the floor. Okay, first rule, Maya said, settling cross-legged on the carpet. We clean up one game before we start another. The other nannies never made us clean, Owen said, but he was already gathering scattered Lego blocks. I'm not the other nannies. Maya helped Ethan right an overturned chair. Second rule, we use our words when we're upset, not our fists or our teeth. Both boys looked guilty. Apparently biting was a recurring problem. Third rule, we're kind to people, even when we're sad or angry. She caught each boy's gaze in turn. Can you do that for me? They nodded solemnly, and Maya felt the first flutter of hope in her chest. The morning flew by in a blur of organized activities, mediating twin disagreements, and discovering that both boys were incredibly bright when given proper attention. Ethan had an artistic streak that showed in his elaborate block constructions, while Owen was drawn to puzzles and anything that involved taking things apart to see how they worked. By lunchtime, Maya had also discovered that neither boy had been to school since their mother's death. We don't like the other kids, Ethan explained when she asked. They stare at us. And they ask stupid questions about Mama, Owen added, his small face scrunching with distress. Maya made a mental note to discuss educational options with Kieran at dinner. The twins needed structure, socialization, and most importantly, they needed to be around other children who would treat them normally instead of like tragic curiosities. Mrs. Chun served lunch in the smaller dining room, a cozy space that actually felt lived in. The alpha usually eats in his office, she mentioned casually. Hasn't eaten with the boys in months. That's going to change, Maya said, cutting Owen's sandwich into triangles the way he preferred. Is Papa really going to eat dinner with us? Ethan asked, his voice small and hopeful. Every night, Maya promised, praying she could deliver on it. The afternoon brought new challenges. Owen melted down when a puzzle piece went missing, and Ethan got overwhelmed during what should have been quiet time, leading to a minor tantrum that involved thrown pillows and tears. But Maya weathered both storms with patience she'd thought she'd lost, and by the time evening rolled around, both boys were calm and chattering about their day. Kieran arrived home at exactly 6:30, his suit jacket gone and his tie loosened. He looked tired and wary, like a man approaching an execution. Papa! The twins rushed him, and Maya watched his entire demeanor shift as he crouched to gather them close. Whatever else was broken in Kieran Blackthorne, his love for his sons wasn't part of it. How was your day? He asked, his voice gentle in a way Maya hadn't heard before. Maya taught us to clean up, Owen reported importantly. And she made Ethan stop biting. I only bit him a little, Ethan protested. And he was being annoying. Brothers are supposed to be annoying sometimes, Kieran said solemnly. It's their job. Maya felt something twist in her chest at the sight. This glimpse of the father he could be when he wasn't drowning in grief. Dinner was Chinese takeout eaten around the kitchen breakfast bar, and if Kieran was uncomfortable with the casual setting, he hid it well. Maya kept the conversation flowing, asking the boys about their favorite games and drawing out stories about their elaborate imaginary adventures. Miss Maya doesn't know how to cook, Ethan informed his father seriously. But she's really good at opening boxes. A valuable skill, Kieran agreed, and Maya caught what might have been amusement in his voice. Why don't you cook, Miss Maya? Owen asked. Mama used to cook sometimes. She made really good cookies. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kieran went completely still, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. I never learned, Maya said easily, pretending not to notice the sudden tension. My mother died when I was very young, and my pack wasn't much for home cooking. We mostly lived on whatever we could hunt or gather. What happened to your pack? Ethan asked with the blunt curiosity of childhood. Hunters found us when I was 16. Maya kept her voice steady, matter of fact. I was the only one who escaped. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken sympathy. Finally, Owen reached over and patted her hand with sticky fingers. That's really sad, Miss Maya. But you have us now. Yes, she managed around the sudden tightness in her throat. I have you now. When she looked up, Kieran was watching her with an unreadable expression. Their eyes met for a moment before he looked away, but something had shifted between them. A recognition of shared loss, maybe, or just the acknowledgement that grief came in many forms. After dinner, Maya supervised bath time while Kieran retreated to his office. The twins were in good spirits, splashing and giggling in a way that felt beautifully normal. But as she was tucking them into their beds, they'd insisted on staying together in Owen's room. Ethan asked the question she'd been dreading. Miss Maya, why don't you come to school things like other mamas do? Her heart clenched. What do you mean, sweetheart? Before, when we still went to school, all the other kids had mamas who came to plays and stuff, Owen explained sleepily. We never had anyone come. Your papa loves you very much, Maya said carefully. Sometimes grown-ups have trouble with things that remind them of sad times. But you're not our mama, Ethan said, though he didn't sound upset about it. You're Miss Maya. That's different, right? Yes, that's different. So you could come to school things. Maya smoothed his hair, her chest aching with the weight of their innocent hope. We'll see, okay? First we need to talk to your papa about school. They accepted this with the easy trust of children, and within minutes both boys were asleep. Maya stood in their doorway for a long moment, watching the steady rise and fall of their breathing, before heading downstairs to tackle the evening cleanup. She found Kieran's office door ajar, soft light spilling into the hallway. He was on the phone, his voice low and authoritative as he discussed pack business. Something about territorial disputes and hunting rights. Maya started to move past, but a flash of movement inside the room made her pause. Through the crack in the door, she could see him at his desk, but he wasn't alone. Scattered across the mahogany surface were dozens of photographs. A beautiful woman with dark hair and laughing eyes, the same woman holding twin babies. Family portraits that spoke of happiness and love and everything this house had lost. Isabella, the wife he'd loved and lost. Maya started to turn away to give him privacy with his grief, but then she heard it, a sound that made her freeze in place. Kieran was crying. Not the quiet, controlled tears she might have expected from an alpha, but broken, devastating sobs that seemed to tear themselves from his chest. There was a bottle of whiskey on the desk beside the photos, more than half empty. Every instinct Maya possessed screamed at her to walk away, to pretend she'd never seen this moment of raw vulnerability. But something stronger than self-preservation kept her rooted in place. The same protective instinct that had driven her into that closet with the twins. He was in pain, drowning in it. And despite everything between them, despite the slap and the warnings and the careful professional distance she was trying to maintain, she couldn't just leave him like this. Maya pushed the door open quietly and stepped inside. Kieran didn't notice her at first, too lost in his grief to sense her presence. It wasn't until she gently lifted the whiskey bottle from his reach that he looked up, his golden eyes red-rimmed and devastated. Maya! Her name came out rough, broken. You shouldn't. Shoo! She set the bottle on a bookshelf, well out of reach, then moved to the closet in the corner where she'd noticed a spare blanket earlier. It's okay. Nothing is okay, he said, his voice raw. Nothing has been okay for 6 months, and I don't know how to fix it. Maya approached him carefully, the way she might approach an injured animal. You don't have to fix everything tonight. She draped the blanket around his shoulders, her movements gentle and impersonal. He leaned into the warmth reflexively, and for a moment she saw not the intimidating alpha, but a man who'd lost everything that mattered and was barely holding on. She was going to name the baby Sarah, he whispered, touching one of the photos with shaking fingers. We had it all planned out, the nursery, the christening, everything. And then... I know, Maya said softly. I'm sorry. She didn't try to offer platitudes or empty comfort. Sometimes grief just needed to be witnessed, not fixed. Kieran's breathing gradually evened out, the alcohol and exhaustion finally pulling him under. Maya waited until she was sure he was asleep before turning off the desk lamp and checking that the blanket was secure around his shoulders. Good night, Kieran, she whispered, then slipped out of the office and closed the door behind her. The next morning dawned bright and clear, and Maya came downstairs to find Kieran already in the kitchen, dressed for work and looking perfectly composed. If not for the slight shadows under his eyes, she might have thought the previous night had been a dream. Good morning, he said, his voice professionally polite. I trust you slept well. Fine, thank you. Maya accepted the coffee Mrs. Chun handed her, studying Kieran's carefully neutral expression. How are you feeling? Perfectly well. His tone made it clear the subject was closed. I have meetings all day, but I should be home by 6:30 for dinner. Papa! The twins thundered into the kitchen like a small hurricane, already dressed and ready for the day. Miss Maya says we might get to go back to school. Kieran's gaze sharpened. Does she now? We discussed educational options yesterday, Maya said calmly. The boys are bright and social. They need structure and peer interaction. I'll consider it. But his tone suggested he wouldn't, at least not seriously. Papa, can Miss Maya come to school things if we go back? Owen asked, climbing onto his father's lap with the easy affection of a well-loved child. Like other mamas do? Kieran's entire body went rigid. Miss Maya isn't your mother, Owen. She's your nanny. The harsh words hit their target. Owen's face crumpled, and Ethan stepped protectively closer to Maya's side. The easy morning atmosphere shattered like glass. I know she's not Mama, Owen said in a small voice. But she takes care of us like mamas do. And she doesn't go away. Yet, Kieran said, and Maya felt the word like a physical blow. That's enough. Maya's voice cut through the tension, sharp with authority that made even Kieran blink. Boys, go brush your teeth. Now. They fled without argument, sensing the adult conflict brewing. Maya waited until their footsteps faded upstairs before turning back to Kieran. Don't take your grief out on them, she said quietly. They've lost enough. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Maya set down her coffee cup with deliberate control. You're terrified that they'll get attached to me and I'll leave like everyone else has. You're scared that if they start seeing me as a maternal figure, it somehow diminishes their mother's memory. And you're absolutely petrified that you might start depending on me too. Kieran's face went white, then flushed with anger. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Maya stepped closer, close enough to smell his cologne and the lingering traces of last night's whiskey. I've been where you are, Kieran. I've lost everything that mattered and had to figure out how to keep breathing. The difference is, I don't have two little boys watching my every move and learning that love means loss. They're my sons. And they're hurting. Maya's voice gentled slightly. They need stability, routine, and yes, they need someone who shows up for school events and birthday parties and all the normal things that make childhood feel safe. I can be that person, or you can keep cycling through nannies and teaching them that caring about someone is just a setup for abandonment. Kieran stared at her for a long moment, his jaw working like he was fighting some internal battle. Finally, he grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. 6:30, he said without looking back. Don't be late. After he left, Maya sank into a chair and buried her face in her hands. Mrs. Chen appeared beside her with a fresh cup of coffee and a knowing look. He'll come around, the older woman said gently. It just takes time. I'm not sure I have that much time, Maya admitted. 2 strikes, remember? Maybe. Mrs. Chen settled into the chair across from her. Or maybe you're exactly what this family needs to start healing. Maya hoped she was right, because despite all her talk about professional boundaries and keeping her distance, she was already falling in love with this broken little family. And that terrified her more than anything Kieran could say or do. Chapter 3. Custody Wars and Cruel Truths. 3 weeks later, Maya was beginning to believe they might actually make it work. The twins had settled into a routine that felt natural: breakfast together, educational activities, outdoor play, and those precious family dinners that had become the highlight of her day. Even Kieran had started to relax slightly, though he still maintained careful distance from her personally. Then the legal papers arrived. Maya was in the garden with the boys, watching them chase butterflies among Isabella's prize roses, when Mrs. Chen appeared on the terrace with an expression that made Maya's stomach drop. Miss Maya? There's a courier here for the Alpha. Legal documents. He says it's urgent. The twins were too absorbed in their game to notice the tension, but Maya felt it like a physical weight settling on her shoulders. In her experience, urgent legal documents never brought good news. Kieran emerged from the house 20 minutes later, his face carved from stone. The papers in his hand shook slightly, the only sign of the fury Maya could smell rolling off him in waves. Boys, he called, his voice carefully controlled. Inside. Now. Ethan and Owen looked up from where they'd been building fairy houses out of twigs and leaves, their identical faces scrunching with confusion at their father's tone. But Papa, we're not done, Owen started. Inside. Maya, my office. 10 minutes. He disappeared back into the house, leaving Maya to gather 2 bewildered children and try to explain why their father suddenly looked like he wanted to tear something apart. Is Papa mad at us? Ethan whispered as Maya settled them in the playroom with strict instructions to stay put. No, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups get upset about grown-up things that have nothing to do with little boys. She kissed both their foreheads, breathing in their innocent scent for comfort. Mrs. Chen will bring you a snack, okay? Kieran was pacing behind his desk when she knocked, the legal papers scattered across the mahogany surface like pieces of a bomb. He looked up when she entered, and the raw fury in his golden eyes made her Omega instincts scream warnings. They want my sons, he said without preamble. Rebecca's parents. They're filing for full custody. Maya sank into the chair across from his desk, her legs suddenly unsteady. On what grounds? Unfit environment. Improper supervision. And, his jaw clenched so tight she was surprised his teeth didn't crack. Domestic violence. The words hit her like ice water. The slap. They're calling it assault. They have witnesses. Mrs. Chun saw the aftermath. The twins were present. They're painting me as an unstable alpha who can't control his temper around the help. Maya's mind raced through the implications. What about the boys? What do they want? Kieran's laugh was bitter and completely without humor. Harold and Vivian Sterling want to provide a stable, traditional pack environment for their grandsons. Translation, they want to erase everything about this house, about me, about... He gestured helplessly at the space between them. About me, Maya finished quietly. They're characterizing you as a destabilizing influence. A damaged Omega with no pack ties trying to insert herself into a family where she doesn't belong. His voice dropped to a growl. They're calling you an opportunist who saw a grieving widower and 2 vulnerable children as a meal ticket. Each word was a blade, cutting deeper than the last. Maya had heard variations of these accusations before, from employers who'd fired her, from other wolves who'd whispered about the packless Omega who couldn't even protect her own child. But hearing them in Kieran's voice, seeing the legal weight behind them, made her feel sick. "When's the hearing?" she asked. 2 weeks. They've requested an expedited schedule because of the urgent threat to the children's well-being. Kieran crumpled one of the papers in his fist. "Maya, I need you to know, whatever happens, whatever they make you say or do." "I'll testify truthfully," she interrupted. "About the night you hit me, about everything that's happened since. The good and the bad." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or gratitude. "Even if it costs you your job?" Maya thought about Ethan's latest drawing, currently hanging on the refrigerator, depicting their family dinner as stick figures around a wonky table. She thought about Owen's bedtime ritual of making her promise she'd be there when he woke up. She thought about the way both boys had started sleeping through the night without nightmares for the first time since their mother died. "Especially then," she said. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of depositions, character witnesses, and lawyers who looked at Maya like she was something unfortunate they'd scraped off their shoes. The Sterling family had hired the most prestigious PAC law firm in the state, while Kieran's legal team, though competent, was clearly outgunned. Maya found herself thrust into a world she'd never wanted to navigate. Werewolf high society politics where bloodlines mattered more than hearts and traditional PAC structures were considered sacred. The Sterling family was old money, old power, with connections that reached into every corner of supernatural society. "They're going to try to destroy you on the stand," Kieran's lawyer, a sharp-eyed beta named Sarah Martinez, warned Maya during prep sessions. "They'll dig into your past, your PAC's destruction, your own child. Nothing is off limits." Maya had expected as much. Grief was a luxury she'd learned she couldn't afford, not when it made her vulnerable to people who would use her pain as ammunition. The custody hearing was held in the PAC's formal council chambers, a wood-paneled room that reeked of old money and older prejudices. Maya had never seen so many expensive suits in one place, or felt the weight of so many disapproving stares. Harold and Vivian Sterling sat in the front row with their legal team, both of them radiating the kind of cold authority that came from generations of power. Vivian was an elegant woman in her 60s, her silver hair perfectly coiffed and her blue eyes sharp with intelligence and ruthless determination. Harold was broader, more obviously alpha, but it was clear that his wife was the real power behind their PAC's throne. The twins weren't present, too young for the formal proceedings, but Maya could feel their absence like a missing limb. They were spending the day with Mrs. Chun, probably wondering why the adults in their lives had suddenly become so tense and distracted. The Sterling's lawyer, a distinguished alpha named Morrison, painted a picture of Kieran as a grief-stricken man who'd lost control of his household and his temper. He presented evidence of the revolving door of nannies, the twins' withdrawal from school, and what he termed the violent incident with the current domestic employee. Maya sat in the witness gallery, listening to her life being dissected and her relationship with the family being twisted into something ugly and predatory. By the time Morrison finished his opening statement, she sounded like a calculating opportunist who'd manipulated 2 traumatized children and their vulnerable father. Kieran's lawyer fought back with testimony about his devotion to his sons, his successful leadership of his PAC, and the dramatic improvement in the twins' behavior since Maya's arrival. But Maya could see the doubt in some of the council elders' faces. Doubt about whether an unmated alpha could properly raise children, whether a PACless Omega was a suitable influence, whether the whole arrangement was appropriate by traditional standards. Then it was Maya's turn to testify. She walked to the witness stand on unsteady legs, hyper-aware of every eye in the room tracking her movement. The oath felt like lead on her tongue as she swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Morrison approached her like a predator circling wounded prey. "Miss Rivers, is it true that you have no PAC affiliation?" "Yes." "And is it true that your original PAC was destroyed by hunters 6 years ago?" Maya's chest tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "Yes." "How tragic. And you were the sole survivor." She could see where this was going, but there was no way around it. "Yes." "Tell me, Miss Rivers, what happened to your own child during this attack?" The question hit like a physical blow. Maya heard Kieran's sharp intake of breath behind her, felt the ripple of whispers through the gallery. She'd never told him about Emma, had never told anyone in this house about the daughter she'd lost. "Objection," Sarah Martinez called out. "Relevance goes to the witness's emotional stability and fitness to care for children," Morrison replied smoothly. "I'll allow it," the presiding elder said. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength from some reserve she'd thought was long depleted. My daughter Emma was killed in the attack. She was 3 years old. How devastating. And how does losing a child affect one's judgment when it comes to other people's children? Might it not create an unhealthy attachment? Objection. Sustained. But the damage was done. Maya could feel the shift in the room's energy, the way grief was being weaponized against her. Morrison moved on to the night Kieran had struck her, making her relive every detail for the court record. Mr. Blackthorne struck you across the face, is that correct? Yes. Hard enough to leave bruising. Maya touched her cheek reflexively. Yes. And what was your response to this assault? I stayed. The children needed me. Morrison's smile was sharp with triumph. You stayed despite being physically assaulted by your employer. Some might say that shows either very poor judgment or very strong motivation to remain in that household. Which was it, Miss Rivers? Maya looked across the room and found Kieran's eyes. He was staring at her with an expression of such raw regret that it nearly broke her composure. The children had just lost their mother, she said quietly. They were traumatized, neglected, desperate for stability. Mr. Blackthorne was grieving and made a terrible mistake in a moment of pain. But abandoning Ethan and Owen would have been a worse one. How noble. Tell me, Miss Rivers, what is your monthly salary for caring for the Blackthorne children? The figure, when Maya stated it, drew surprised murmurs from the gallery. It was more than generous, more than she'd ever made in her life. Quite substantial for someone with no formal childcare training, Morrison observed. Some might wonder what additional services you provide to earn such compensation. The implication was clear and disgusting. Maya felt her face flush with humiliation and fury, but before she could respond, Kieran was on his feet. Enough! His voice cracked through the chamber like a whip. You will not sit there and assassinate this woman's character with your perverted insinuations. Mr. Blackthorne, sit down, the presiding elder ordered sharply. She has done nothing but love my sons and try to heal what your daughter's parents helped break. Kieran continued, his alpha authority rolling through the room in waves that made lesser wolves duck their heads instinctively. Order! Mr. Blackthorne, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt. Kieran sat, but the damage, or perhaps the good, was done. Everyone in that room had seen a father's desperate love for his children and fierce protectiveness of the woman who cared for them. Morrison wrapped up his cross-examination quickly after that, clearly satisfied that he'd painted Maya as everything from a gold digger to an emotional wreck to an inappropriate influence. Maya stepped down from the witness stand feeling flayed raw and utterly exposed. The afternoon brought the twins' therapist, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a kind woman in her 50s who'd been seeing the boys twice a week since Maya's arrival. Her testimony was a bright note in an otherwise devastating day. The improvement in both children has been remarkable, Dr. Warren said. When I first started seeing Ethan and Owen, they were withdrawn, aggressive, and showing signs of severe attachment disorder. They'd been through 14 different caregivers in 6 months, and had essentially stopped trusting that adults would stay in their lives. And how would you characterize their current emotional state? Sarah Martinez asked. Dramatically improved. They're sleeping through the night, engaging in age-appropriate play, showing affection appropriately. Most importantly, they've formed a secure attachment with Miss Rivers that's actually helping them process their grief over their mother's death, rather than being stuck in it. In your professional opinion, would removing Miss Rivers from their lives be detrimental to their psychological well-being? Dr. Warren didn't hesitate. It would be devastating. These children have finally found stability and trust again. Taking that away would likely undo months of progress and could cause lasting psychological damage. But Morrison's cross-examination was brutal. Dr. Warren, isn't it possible that the children's attachment to Miss Rivers is actually unhealthy? That they're using her as a replacement mother figure rather than properly grieving their actual mother? No, I don't believe that's the case. Isn't it true that grief counselors generally recommend against introducing new parental figures too quickly after a loss? In some cases, but... And isn't it concerning that these children are becoming so dependent on someone with no family ties, no community support, no guarantee of permanence in their lives? Dr. Warren tried to explain the difference between healthy attachment and unhealthy dependency, but Maya could see the doubt creeping back into the council elders' faces. The final blow came when Vivian Sterling herself took the stand. She was composed, dignified, and absolutely ruthless. She spoke about her daughter Rebecca with the kind of loving reverence that made everyone in the room remember what they'd lost. She painted a picture of the life she and Harold could provide for their grandsons. Private tutors, pack connections, a proper alpha bloodline, a traditional family structure. "Mrs. Sterling," Morrison asked gently, "what is your opinion of the current arrangement in your son-in-law's household?" Vivian's blue eyes found Maya across the room, and the look in them was pure ice. "My daughter was everything a Luna should be, elegant, educated, devoted to her family and her pack. She died bringing those precious boys into the world, and she deserves better than to be replaced by." She paused, letting her gaze travel over Maya with obvious disdain. "A poor substitute trying to steal my daughter's life." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Around her, she could hear the sharp intake of breath from spectators, could smell the mix of sympathy and agreement from different sections of the gallery. "Rebecca loved those boys more than life itself," Vivian continued, her voice growing stronger. "She would be heartbroken to see them calling another woman mama, to see some packless stranger sitting at her dinner table, sleeping under her roof, taking her place in every way that matters." Objection. Sarah Martinez was on her feet. "The witness is speculating about the deceased's feelings and mischaracterizing the current situation." Sustained, but I'll allow the witness to continue. Maya felt the walls of the chamber closing in around her. She could see the sympathy in some faces, the calculation in others, the certainty in Vivian Sterling's eyes that she'd delivered a killing blow. "Those boys belong with family," Vivian said firmly. "With people who knew and loved their mother, who can tell them stories about her, who can give them the proper pack heritage they deserve. Not with some damaged woman who's using their grief to fill the hole where her own child used to be." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya sat frozen in her seat, feeling like every eye in the room was dissecting her, judging her, finding her wanting. When court adjourned for the day, Maya barely made it to the courthouse steps before her composure cracked completely. The late afternoon sun felt harsh on her face as she stumbled toward the parking garage, desperate to escape the stares and whispers. She found an empty stairwell, and finally let herself break. The sobs came from somewhere deep inside her chest, tearing through her throat like broken glass. 6 years of grief, loss, and barely contained desperation poured out of her all at once. Vivian Sterling's words echoed in her head. "Poor substitute, trying to steal my daughter's life, damaged woman using their grief." Maybe she was right. Maybe Maya was just a broken omega trying to fill the void where her own family used to be. Maybe loving Ethan and Owen was selfish, a way of healing her own wounds rather than truly serving their best interests. She was so lost in her breakdown that she didn't hear the footsteps until a familiar scent washed over her, pine and leather, and the particular musk that belonged only to Kieran. "Maya!" She looked up to find him standing in the stairwell doorway, still in his dark suit, but with his tie loosened and his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. His golden eyes were filled with something that looked like devastation. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, wiping at her face with shaking hands. "I know this looks unprofessional, but I just needed a minute to." "Stop." He moved toward her slowly, like she was a wounded animal that might bolt. "Just stop." He sat down on the concrete step beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. For a long moment they sat in silence, the only sound Maya's gradually steadying breathing. "I heard what she said," he said finally. "Vivian. About you being a poor substitute." Maya flinched. "Maybe she's right. Maybe I am just." "She's not right." Kieran's voice was quiet but absolutely certain. "She's a bitter woman who can't accept that her daughter is gone and that life has to continue without her." Maya turned to look at him, surprised by the vehemence in his tone. "You want to know what Rebecca would think about you?" he continued. "She would be grateful. Grateful that someone loves our sons enough to fight for them, even when it costs them everything. Grateful that they're laughing again, sleeping through the night, building trust with someone who sees them as more than just tragic little orphans." "Kieran, I owe you an apology," he said, cutting her off. "Not just for hitting you, though that was unforgivable. For everything. For treating you like hired help when you've been so much more. For making you carry the weight of this family's healing while I wallowed in my grief. For letting you walk into that courtroom today without preparing you for how brutal they'd be." Maya felt fresh tears threatening. "I knew what I was signing up for." "No, you didn't. And neither did I." He turned to face her fully, and she was shocked to see moisture in his own eyes. "I thought I was hiring a nanny. What I got was someone who loved my sons back to life. Someone who made this house feel like a home again instead of a mausoleum. Someone who..." He trailed off, but Maya could see the truth in his face, could smell it in his scent. Her breath caught in her throat. Someone who what? She whispered. Kieran reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Someone who made me remember what it feels like to be alive. The admission hung between them like a confession, fragile and dangerous and absolutely forbidden. Maya closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite every rational thought screaming at her to pull away. We can't, she said, though the words felt like they were tearing something inside her. Not with the custody case, not with everything. I know. His hand dropped away, leaving her cheek cold. I know, but I needed you to hear it. After today, after what they put you through, I needed you to know that none of this is your fault. That you're not some desperate Omega trying to steal another woman's life. You're Maya Rivers, and you saved my family when I couldn't even save myself. They sat in silence for a while longer, watching the sun set through the stairwell windows. Finally, Kieran stood and offered her his hand. Come on, he said gently. Let's go home to our boys. Our boys. The words sent a warmth through Maya's chest that she knew was dangerous, knew she couldn't afford. But as she took his hand and let him help her to her feet, she allowed herself to hold on to that warmth just a little longer. Tomorrow they'd go back to being employer and employee, to maintaining professional boundaries and pretending that whatever was growing between them didn't exist. Tomorrow they'd face the possibility that she might lose the children she'd come to love more than her own life. But tonight, in the fading light of a courthouse stairwell, they were just two broken people who'd found something worth fighting for in each other. Chapter 4. The Other Woman's Shadow. 3 weeks after the custody hearing, Maya should have been celebrating. The council had ruled in Kieran's favor, barely, deciding that the twins' obvious emotional improvement under Maya's care outweighed the Sterling's traditional arguments. Harold and Vivian had left the courthouse with icy dignity and thinly veiled threats about appeals, but for now, Ethan and Owen were safe. The boys had been ecstatic when they heard the news, launching themselves at Maya and Kieran with the pure joy of children who'd been afraid of losing everything again. That night, they'd had ice cream for dinner and built a blanket fort in the living room where they'd all fallen asleep together. A tangle of limbs and contentment that felt like the family Maya had never dared to dream of. But now, in the harsh light of morning after reality, Maya was discovering that winning and healing were two very different things. She stood outside Kieran's bedroom door at 2 a.m, her hand raised to knock, listening to the sounds that had woken her. Not the twins' nightmares this time, but their father's. The low, broken murmurs coming through the door made her chest ache with recognition. She'd made those same sounds herself in the early days after losing Emma, talking to empty air, and hoping somehow the universe would talk back. I won, Becca. Kieran's voice drifted through the door, thick with grief and exhaustion. I kept them safe, just like I promised. But God, I miss you. I miss you so much I can barely breathe sometimes. Maya pressed her forehead against the cool wood, her heart cracking. She should leave, should give him privacy with his grief, but something kept her frozen in place. She's good with them, he continued, and Maya's breath caught. Maya. She makes them laugh like you used to. But it's not the same. Nothing's the same without you. The words hit like physical blows. Maya stumbled back from the door, her hand pressed to her mouth to muffle any sound that might escape. She made it back to her room before the tears started, great silent sobs that shook her whole body. She was an idiot. A complete, hopeless idiot who'd somehow convinced herself that the tenderness in Kieran's eyes, the way he'd touched her face in that stairwell, meant something more than gratitude. But how could she compete with a ghost? How could she ever measure up to a love that death had made perfect and untouchable? The next morning brought no relief. Maya came downstairs to find fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. White roses, Rebecca's favorites according to Mrs. Chun, and realized with a sinking heart what day it was. It's her birthday, Mrs. Chun said quietly, arranging the roses in a crystal vase that Maya recognized from the photos scattered around the house. He brings flowers every year. Takes them to her grave later. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. She'd known this day was coming, had seen it marked on the calendar in Kieran's office. But knowing and experiencing were different things entirely. The twins were subdued at breakfast, picking at their pancakes with the intuitive awareness children had for adult emotions. Kieran was nowhere to be seen, though Maya could smell his recent presence and the lingering scent of grief that seemed to permeate the entire house. Is Papa sad today? Owen asked, his golden eyes wide with concern. It's Mama's birthday, Ethan explained to his brother with the matter-of-fact tone he used for things he didn't fully understand but had accepted. Papa always gets sad on Mama's birthday. Maya's chest tightened. Sometimes we feel sad on special days when we miss someone we love. Do you miss someone on your birthday? Owen asked with innocent curiosity. The question caught Maya off guard. Did she miss Emma on her birthday? She'd tried so hard not to think about what her daughter would be like now. 9 years old, probably gap-toothed and gangly, maybe with Maya's dark hair and her father's stubborn chin. Yes, she managed. I do. That afternoon, Maya was in the garden with the boys when she saw Kieran through the kitchen window, standing at the counter with his head bowed. He was holding something in his hands, a photo, she realized, and his shoulders were shaking. She left the twins building mud pies and slipped inside, intending to give him privacy, but froze when she saw what was scattered across the granite surface. Photos, dozens of them. Rebecca pregnant with the twins, Rebecca in a hospital gown holding 2 tiny babies, Rebecca laughing at some long-ago family dinner. And in the center of it all, a professional portrait of a woman so beautiful it took Maya's breath away. Rebecca Blackthorne had been everything Maya wasn't, elegant where Maya was practical, refined where Maya was rough around the edges, radiant with the kind of confidence that came from being born into the right family with the right connections. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves, her smile was luminous, and her eyes held the certainty of a woman who'd never doubted her place in the world. Maya stared at the portrait and felt something inside her wither. How had she ever thought she could fill this woman's shoes? How had she been stupid enough to believe that a man who'd loved someone like that could ever see her as more than a convenient placeholder? Kieran looked up and caught her staring. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face raw with grief that 6 months hadn't even begun to heal. She would have been 32 today, he said, his voice hoarse. We were going to go to that little restaurant in town, the one with the terrible service but amazing desserts. She loved their chocolate cake. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She started to back away, to give him space, but his next words stopped her cold. Do you think? He cleared his throat, looking suddenly vulnerable. Do you think she would have approved of you? Of how you are with the boys? The question was innocent, probably even meant as a compliment, but it sliced through Maya like a blade. Everything came back to Rebecca. Even his opinion of Maya's worth was filtered through his dead wife's imagined approval. I think, Maya said carefully, that she would want her sons to be happy and loved. Yes. Kieran's smile was soft and sad. She would. She was like that, always putting others first. Maya escaped to her room that evening, claiming a headache that wasn't entirely a lie. She lay on her bed staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how she'd gotten so lost. When had she stopped being the professional nanny and started being the pathetic Omega pining for a man who saw her as nothing more than hired help? The answer came with uncomfortable clarity. The night in the courthouse stairwell when he'd touched her face and made her believe, just for a moment, that she might mean something to him beyond her usefulness to his children. A soft knock interrupted her brooding. Miss Maya? Owen's voice was muffled by the door. Can we come in? She opened the door to find both twins in their pajamas, looking worried and uncertain. Mrs. Chun said you have a headache, Ethan said, studying her face with the intensity of a child who'd learned to read adult emotions for survival. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. She ushered them inside, grateful for the distraction. Just tired. They climbed onto her bed without invitation, settling on either side of her like bookends. Owen pressed his small hand to her forehead with the seriousness of a doctor. You don't feel hot, he declared. Maybe it's a sad headache. What? Sometimes I get sad headaches, Ethan explained. When I think too much about Mama being gone. They hurt different than regular headaches. Maya's throat closed. These children, barely 5 years old, had already learned to categorize their pain. You're very wise, both of you. They stayed with her until they fell asleep, tiny bodies warm against her sides, trusting her to keep the nightmares away. Maya lay awake long after their breathing evened out, memorizing the weight of them, the way Owen snored softly and Ethan talked in his sleep. Because despite the custody victory, despite the fact that they were safe and thriving, Maya was beginning to realize she couldn't stay. Not when every day was a reminder that she was living in another woman's shadow, caring for another woman's children, slowly falling apart while the man she was stupidly in love with grieved for the only woman he'd ever truly see. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Maya was in the kitchen making breakfast when Mrs. Chun announced that someone was at the door asking for her. For me. Maya couldn't imagine who would know to find her here. Says her name is Belle Morrison. Claims to be an old friend. Maya's heart leaped. Belle, her childhood friend from before the pack's destruction, one of the few connections to her old life that the hunters hadn't severed. She rushed to the front door and found a petite woman with silver-streaked hair and sharp green eyes waiting on the porch. "Belle!" Maya breathed. "Hello, stranger." Belle's smile was warm but tinged with sadness. "Took me forever to track you down. You don't make it easy." They embraced fiercely, and for a moment Maya felt like the girl she'd been before loss had carved all the soft edges away from her heart. "What are you doing here?" Maya asked, pulling back to study her friend's face. "Heard through the grapevine about your custody battle. Figured you might need some moral support." Belle's eyes were kind but knowing. "Also figured it was past time someone told you some hard truths." They spent the morning catching up while the twins played in the garden. Belle had found a new pack after their old one was destroyed, had mated with a kind beta and raised 2 children who were now adults with families of their own. She had the settled contentment of a woman who'd built a good life from the ashes of a bad one. "You look tired," Belle said finally, studying Maya over her coffee cup. "I am tired. That's not what I mean." Belle leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Maya, honey, what are you doing to yourself?" "I don't know what you mean." "Don't." Belle's tone sharpened. "Don't lie to me. I can smell it on you. The longing, the heartbreak, the hope that's killing you inch by inch. You're in love with him." Maya's careful composure cracked. "Belle!" "With a man who's already buried his heart with his dead wife." Belle reached across the table and took Maya's hands. "Sweetheart, I've watched you these past few hours. The way you light up when those boys laugh, the way you automatically straighten things that belong to her, the way you flinch every time his name comes up in conversation. This isn't a job for you anymore. It's torture." "The children need me," Maya said weakly. "The children need stability and love, yes. But they don't need you to sacrifice yourself on the altar of their father's grief." Belle squeezed her hands. "Maya, when was the last time you did something for yourself? When was the last time you even thought about your own happiness?" Maya couldn't answer because she couldn't remember. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped existing as a separate person and become just an extension of this family's needs. "He'll never love you," Belle said, her voice gentle but implacable. "Not because you're not worthy of love, but because he's not capable of it. Not while he's still married to a ghost." The words Maya had been avoiding thinking hit her like a physical blow. She doubled over, gasping for breath that wouldn't come. "I know it hurts," Belle murmured, moving around the table to pull Maya into her arms. "But staying here, hoping he'll see you someday, it's going to destroy you. And those boys, they'll learn that love means suffering in silence, that women exist to serve others at the expense of themselves. Is that what you want to teach them?" Maya cried then, great ugly sobs that came from the deepest parts of her soul. Belle held her and let her fall apart, the way only an old friend could. "There's a family in Colorado," Belle said when Maya's tears finally slowed. "The Riverside Pack. They need a nanny for their 3 children. Good family, kind alpha, fair wages. I could make a call." "I can't leave them," Maya whispered. "You can't stay," Belle replied firmly. "Not like this. Not when it's killing you." That evening, after Belle had gone back to her hotel, Maya found herself standing in the doorway of Kieran's office. He was at his desk, surrounded by the detritus of his workday, but his attention was focused on something in his hands. Rebecca's pillow. Maya's breath caught as she watched him press the silk case to his face, breathing in whatever trace of his wife's scent still lingered there. The gesture was so intimate, so private, that she felt like a voyeur for witnessing it. She started to back away, but he looked up and caught sight of her. "Maya!" He quickly set the pillow aside, his face flushing with what might have been embarrassment. "I didn't hear you come in. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." But she didn't leave. Instead, she stepped into the office and closed the door behind her. "Kieran, we need to talk." Something in her tone made him straighten, his alpha instincts picking up on the shift in her demeanor. "Is everything all right?" "The boys are fine. This is about me." Maya took a breath, gathering courage she didn't feel. "I'm giving my notice." The words hit him like a physical blow. He stood so quickly his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "What? Why?" "If this is about the custody battle, about what they said in court." "It's not about that." Maya kept her voice steady with effort. "I've accepted a position with another family. In Colorado." "Colorado." He said the word like it was a foreign language. "Maya, you can't be serious. The boys need you." "The boys need stability and consistency, yes. But they don't need me specifically." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but it was necessary. "There are other qualified nannies." Not like you. Kieran moved around the desk, his scent sharp with desperation. Maya, please. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. If you need more money. It's not about money. Then what? More time off? Different responsibilities? Just tell me what you need. Maya looked at him, really looked, and saw a man panicking at the thought of losing the person who'd made his impossible life manageable. Not because he cared about her, but because he couldn't handle another loss, another change, another reminder that nothing lasted forever. I need, she said quietly, to stop loving you. The words hung in the air between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Kieran went completely still, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been panic. Maya, I'm in love with you, she continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. Completely, hopelessly, pathetically in love with a man who will never see me as anything more than hired help. A man who still sleeps with his dead wife's pillow and talks to her picture and brings her flowers on her birthday. Kieran's face went white. That's not, I don't. You do. Maya stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his eyes, to smell the pine and leather scent that would haunt her dreams. And I understand it. She was beautiful and perfect, and she gave you those precious boys. But I can't compete with a ghost, Kieran. I can't keep pretending that someday you might look at me and see a woman instead of a convenient solution to your childcare problems. Maya, please. His voice was raw, desperate. Don't do this. The boys, God, the boys will be devastated. They've lost so much already. And there it is. Maya smiled sadly. It's all about them, isn't it? Never about me. Never about what this might be doing to me. Kieran reached for her, his hands hovering just short of her shoulders like he was afraid she might disappear if he touched her. I care about you. You have to know that. You care about what I do for your family. There's a difference. Maya stepped back before she could do something stupid like lean into his touch. I'm sorry, Kieran. I really am. But I can't stay here and slowly die inside while you grieve for the only woman you'll ever really love. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. When? Maya didn't turn around. I'd like to stay until you find someone else. For the boys' sake. But no longer than 2 weeks. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya waited for him to say something. Anything that might change her mind. A declaration, a plea, even an acknowledgement that her feelings might matter to him. But all he said was, I'll start looking for a replacement. Maya nodded and walked out, closing the door on the best and worst job of her life. She made it halfway up the stairs before she heard it. The sound of something heavy hitting the wall, followed by a string of curses that would have made a sailor blush. Part of her wanted to go back, to comfort him, to apologize for adding to his pain. But Belle was right. She had to save herself, even if it meant breaking her own heart in the process. The next morning, Maya was in the kitchen packing the twins' lunch when 2 small bodies barreled into her legs. Miss Maya. Owen's voice was thick with tears. Papa said you're leaving us. We don't want you to go, Ethan added, his arms tightening around her waist. Please don't leave us like Mama did. Maya's heart shattered. She knelt down to their level, pulling both boys into her arms and breathing in their sweet, innocent scent. I'm not leaving because I want to, she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices, even when those choices hurt. But why? Owen's golden eyes were swimming with tears. Don't you love us anymore? Oh, sweetheart. Maya kissed his forehead, then Ethan's. I love you both more than anything in this world. More than the moon and the stars and all the ice cream in the universe. Then stay, Ethan said simply. If you love us, stay. Maya closed her eyes, wishing it were that simple. Wishing love was enough to build a life on, instead of just enough to break your heart. Sometimes, she said carefully, loving someone means doing what's best for them, even when it hurts. You're going to be okay. Your papa loves you so much, and he's going to find someone wonderful to take care of you. We don't want someone wonderful, Owen said fiercely. We want you. Maya held them until their tears stopped, until Mrs. Chen called them for breakfast, until she couldn't put off the inevitable any longer. As she watched them eat their cereal with red eyes and trembling lips, she wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. But then she remembered the pillow in Kieran's hands, the way he talked to Rebecca's photo, the flowers on her birthday. She thought about Belle's words and the hollow ache in her chest that grew worse every day. No, she was making the right choice. The only choice that might let her survive with her heart intact. Even if it meant leaving the best part of herself behind. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share, and subscribe for more.